Room correction seems like an ideal solution for people who have their stereo located in an acoustically suboptimal environment. In many cases, it's a good solution, but not always. Have you ever noticed that instruments like a piano, played in the same room as your stereo, almost never cause the same acoustic problems as those of your stereo? I have. I have also noticed that true high-end stereos rarely use room correction. I know there are exceptions. Mostly these are designed from the start up to include room correction. As you may know, I use 3 stereo setups as a reference. See the link in the top right corner at the end of the video and in the description. But I do not use room correction systems in any of these setups. Not because it's always wrong, but because it's not the best solution in my case. My more affordable setups 2 and 3 are located in the attic, where the cabinets along both side walls contain books, records, DVDs, Blu-rays and irregular shaped objects. As a result, early lateral reflections are scattered and damped. Behind the stereo system and behind the listening position, the sloping roof begins at a height of 1 meter. 2.2 meters above the listening position is a 1.5 meter deep mezzanine, where I store my empty boxes. These absorb the excess bass. By carefully positioning the speakers, reflections against the sloping roof do not cause any problems either. Therefore, a room correction system is not necessary. In a living room, things are different. Here, the Aesthetics Committee has a say too. In 2020, I used the Auralic Aries G2 as a network bridge, connected to the Mytek Brooklyn DAC. This was connected to an Audio Note Soro SE tube amplifier driving Audiophysics Scorpio loudspeakers. A REL-B2 subwoofer completed the setup. That was when I used the Mini DSP SHD Studio with Direct Live. You can find a link to the review at the usual places. But when the quality of my reference setup 1 improved over time, I noticed that I preferred to leave Direct out. Why was that? When the Chord QDB76 DAC was introduced in 2008, I noticed sound qualities that I had not heard from a DAC until then. After a conversation with designer Rob Watts, time behavior proved to be the decisive factor. Then came MQA. Bob Stewart, one of the 2 developers of MQA, pointed to time behavior again. MQA filtering was also used in the Mytek Brooklyn DAC, and although there is a fundamental difference between Watts' transients aligned filter and master quality authenticated, both focus on rendering transients that are palatable to our ears. When I then heard the major DAC in the Cream Audio Mu2 player in late 2023, I knew immediately that its time behavior was yet another step forward compared to the WTA filter. At High-End Vienna 2026, Grimm introduced mono-power amplifiers featuring a special technique that yielded very high time resolution and minimal time blurring. And that was quite audible. It was where I realized again that analog equipment can influence timing as well. At the same trade fair, Chord demonstrated their new quarter upscaler, and this demonstration was more than convincing. Basic room correction measures the transfer function, the characteristics of the signal path, from the DAC to the listener's ears. Thus, the characteristics of the DAC, the amplifier, the loudspeaker and the air vibrations in the room are measured. Subsequently, the processing is adjusted so that the overall sound comes as close as possible to the ideal frequency curve set as the target curve. This means, for example, that deviations from the perfectly flat frequency curve of the loudspeakers are corrected, while you may have chosen that particular loudspeaker precisely because of its unique sonic character. Filter designers sometimes accept a certain deviation in the frequency curve because this results in better phase behavior, or to avoid the resonance point of a loudspeaker cone. It is therefore often better to correct only the low frequencies, for example up to 500 Hz. On the other hand, design flaws in the signal part, such as resonances in the mid-range driver, can be corrected. Some room correction systems, such as Direct Live, also correct phase behavior. That can have an even greater influence on the sound character. Technically speaking, that's great. Whether that is to your taste is hard to say. It is important to realize that the electronic room correction does not correct the room itself, nor the room behavior. Instead, it processes the music file using the inverse of the measured deviation. Simply put, if 120 Hz is 3 dB too loud, the music signal is filtered minus 3 dB at 120 Hz. This filtering is only correct at the designated listening position, because the coloration of the room depends on the position in the room. As I said, musical instruments played in the living room almost never cause acoustic problems. That may be partly true because the musician adapts its playing to the acoustics of the room, but it is also very important that the music coming from the instrument is only affected by the natural time smearing caused by the air. If the same could be achieved with a very good stereo system, there should be no acoustical problem either. My reference system 1A comes very close to that in combination with the active bass absorber PSA AVA C214. But my reference setup 1B is on the edge. Still here I prefer playing without room correction. With systems 2 and 3, room correction would have been necessary if they had been in my living room. Two important factors play a role in determining whether room correction is a better solution. The influence of the room on the sound quality and the influence of the room correction on the sound quality. The latter can be subdivided into the quality of the digital signal processor and the effect of the correction has on the sound character, as it corrects the aberrations in your stereo. So what you need to do is play music you know through your system and compare the result with and without room correction. If you notice that low frequencies sound clearer, tighter and perhaps with more texture, the room correction works for you. If midtones and trebles sound less clear, if voices sound sharper, or if sibilance is less well controlled, first lower the digital output level of the room correction system by about 3 dB and try again. See my video Improve the Sound Quality of Your DAC for free. Links at the usual places. If that helps and you find it more pleasant than no room correction, go for it. If the sharpness is still there, or if the stereo image sucks, you can choose between using room correction or not. Try as many different songs as possible. One song may activate room resonances less than others. Why does a higher quality stereo system suffer less from acoustic problems? Our hearing has a very high temporal resolution. That might sound strange considering a young person can hear up to 20 kHz. The period of a 20 kHz signal is 1/20,000th of a second, or 0.05 milliseconds. But clock oscillators in a modern DAC have precision in the picosecond range to achieve a good sound quality. If we then know that 100 picoseconds are represented decimally as follows, and that 0.05 milliseconds are represented as follows, you then see that our ears must work differently than linear audio equipment, both analog and digital, and that our hearing has a much higher temporal resolution than previously thought. Some people I hold in high regard believe that a large part of the refinement of a stereo image lies here. The less of that minuscule temporal information is lost, the better the stereo image is and the better our hearing can distinguish the information reproduced by the stereo from other sources, such as reflections from the room. I have experienced clear quality improvements every time I upgraded to a newer DAC. Do not be tempted to think that we need a much higher sampling rate. That's not the case. A good recording played through the best decks of today comes quite close to the idea. The problem lies in the average digital filtering applied in many affordable DACs. That filtering distorts the time information. I have no proof. I wouldn't know how to measure that. It is based on my own experience and that of others. In the meantime, if room correction works in your case, enjoy it, because I know of no other affordable solution than room correction. And on that bombshell we come to the end of this video. A new video is coming soon, so don't forget to subscribe or follow me on Patreon, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram or TikTok. Patreon and YouTube Premium members get early access and no ads. A huge thank you to everyone who supports the channel financially. Please don't be shy, I appreciate every single euro, pound, dollar or equivalent you donate. You keep me independent and motivated. It's easy to contribute using the QR code on screen or the links in the description. I'm Hans Beekhuizen. Thank you for watching, and whatever you do, enjoy the music.